And I think Tampa Bay is the better team. Washington has outplayed them. I worry about them going back to Tampa Bay, the Lightning, because Washington is the best road team left in the playoffs. So I wouldn't be surprised if Washington won. And I don't want to blame Braden Holtby because the defense hasn't been great. They like to shoot the pucks, the defensemen. They're very offensively talented. They have 36 points combined, but they're not that great defensively.
Yeah.
Also, the road team has won every game in this series, right? Yeah. So that's very important, too. What about Knights-Jets?
Marc-Andre Fleury.
That
he just
has
keeps
to kill
breaking the hearts of Penguins fans.
I was just about to say, you've got to be crawled up in the fetal position.
No, and I'm rooting for Winnipeg, and I'm not rooting against Marc-Andre Fleury. I wish him all the success. I'm so happy that he's doing well. I just rather see Winnipeg win. But Marc-Andre Fleury has been playing so great. Connor Hellebuyck hasn't been playing that well.
Yeah, that was going to be my key factor to this matchup, is that at least for Game 3, that Hellebuyck just did not look well at all. A lot of mess ups behind the crease, and then also just
his puck handling is garbage. It's veteran presence. That's what it is.
I don't like when goalies puck handle.
Yeah. Neither do I. Rick DiPietro was the worst with it.
Very few.
And Halak too.
Halak's bad. Yeah,
not as bad as DiPietro.
Matt Murray is horrible. Very few goaltenders can do it, and if you can't do it well, you should just stay in your net. And I say that at my brother's level too. He knows he can't play the puck, so he does not do it.
Well, that's because your brother's smart.
Yeah, if you can't do it, just stay in the net.
Does he want to play for the Islanders?
Exactly. I was going to say, sign him up. But, can't do any worse than Grice.
But Winnipeg's a very fast team, and they look slow against Vegas because their speed game is ridiculous. Yeah. And that's why they win games. It's very hard to win in Vegas. Connor Hellebuyck, it's the only place that he's been pulled all season, during the regular season. So he can't play there. He doesn't have help either.
No, definitely.
And I have to bring up, I feel like the first goal, what was in 35 seconds it was or something? I feel like he could have stopped that.
Yeah, and he went for the poke check. I mean, it's risky.
He thought he was Wade Duplowitz.
With the poke check, high risk, high reward. It's an
Like I
didn't
said,
do it that time.
He thought he was Wade Duplowitz or Dominic Hasek or Johan Hedberg.
And you don't
play Billy Smith and smack him in the ankles.
And you don't want to chase the game, the entire game. You're down 1-0, 30 seconds in. It doesn't work for anyone.
No, definitely.
And then Dustin Byfuglien handling two guys again.
He is the best bodyguard I've ever seen in my life.
I love him.
He's so awesome.
He's great. So, on that note, let's take a quick break. Don't go anywhere, because we'll have an exclusive interview with Jon Weisman coming up next. He's the author of Brothers in Arms, Koufax, Kershaw, and the Dodgers' extraordinary pitching tradition. It's coming up next on Beyond the Game on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
I'm a college student and could use advice about my student loan.
I had to leave school and go to work. Now I have to pay back student loans for a degree I don't have. Fortunately, I found assistance.
Back in college, I figured they wouldn't lend me more than I could easily pay back. Boy, was I wrong. Thankfully, I got the help I needed to pay back my loan in full.
Sound familiar? The good news is that student loan repayment options are available. We're the NFCC, the National Foundation for Credit Counseling, a nonprofit organization with member offices nationwide that provide comprehensive financial reviews and student loan counseling. NFCC certified consumer credit counselors provide one-on-one financial counseling and can help you evaluate options for making student loan payments, reducing interest, debt consolidation, or even loan rehabilitation. Call 877-406-6322 or visit us online at studentloanhelp.org.
Hey, this is Reba McEntire. Over the years, I've seen many people fall victim to drugs and alcohol. Sadly, some of them never recover, and some of them aren't here anymore. Drugs and alcohol not only negatively impact your career, but also your relationships, your finances, your health, and so much more. The good news is that we have choices, and you can choose to say yes to a drug-free lifestyle. And if you're suffering right now from addiction, please reach out for help. This message is brought to you by the U.S. Air Force.
Alexa, can you please do my food shopping today?
Food shopping today added to your shopping list.
Alexa, can you do my math homework for me?
I'm not sure.
Alexa, play WHPC.
Play WHPC.
Now listen to the voice of Nassau Community College on your Amazon Echo.
Simply say, Alexa, play WHPC.
I am already playing WHPC.
Sorry. So go ahead and buy a silicone steamer in the shape of a faceless melting pig.
By Fine silicone steamer in the shape of a faceless melting pig.
Yeah, that exists. And while you shop, play WHPC.
Or buy a headband with a mullet hair attached to it.
I refuse to buy a headband with mullet hair attached to it.
Yeah, that exists too. Not sure why. But when you buy it, you can play WHPC.
So play WHPC on your Amazon device today.
And thanks for listening to 90.3 WHPC.
You are listening to Beyond the Game on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I am Jacob Volk. Sitting across from me, Dominic Arbolino, Eric Fischetti, and Brandon Johnson. And we are fortunate enough to be joined by Jon Weisman, the author of Brothers in Arms, Koufax, Kershaw, and the Dodgers' extraordinary pitching tradition. John, how are you?
I'm great, guys.
All right. So, what can you tell us about Don Sutton?
Well, Don Sutton has an interesting career because he's known for being sort of a questionable Hall of Fame candidate, I think, in some people's minds, because he maybe didn't have the superb seasons that come to mind for, like, a Pedro Martinez or Roger Clemens or that sort of thing. But the fact is, he actually had so many very good seasons that I think he ends up being underrated because of how many of them he had. He really was a reliable pitcher for more than 2 decades. And there's an interesting story in the New York Times years ago where they asked general managers if they'd rather have the career of Don Sutton or the career of Sandy Koufax. And it was split 50-50 because although Koufax obviously is as supreme as it gets, a lot of those GMs would say, I'd rather have the certainty of knowing that I'm going to have this guy take the mound every day for 20 years and be excellent.
All right, so can you lay out for us the career of Don Drysdale?
Well, Drysdale started out, he was a Dodger from start to finish. His dad was a part-time Dodger scout, so he was born into a baseball family to some extent. And he and Koufax arrived in the organization at roughly the same time, but Drysdale's by far the first one to really establish himself as a first-rate pitcher. And Koufax ends up stealing the headlines in the mid-'60s, but Drysdale won his own Cy Young Award, obviously set the scoreless innings record in 1968, and absolutely had a fantastic career and just filled with great moments.
All right, now, would you be able to describe to us the career of Dazzy Vance?
Dazzy's an interesting one because, my book's about the Dodger pitching tradition, and they sort of stumbled into him. If you sort of date the foundation of this tradition, it starts around World War II, and the guys that they found before that were more accidental finds, and Dazzy's the perfect example of it because the Dodgers were pursuing a minor league catcher in New Orleans. And Dazzy Vance was a journeyman minor leaguer who was struggling. He had already turned 30. But he had an injury that, after years of being troubled by it, finally healed. And so when the Dodgers couldn't have gotten him in a better time, and he becomes, in his own way, the Pedro Martinez of that era because his strikeout rate when he pitched for Brooklyn in his 30s was basically roughly double the league average strikeout rate. He was an extraordinary pitcher, and he also pitches into his 40s. And he ends up being really one of the greatest pitchers in Dodger history, and yet he hadn't even been with the team until after he turned 30.
Oh, okay. So what can you tell us about the man with one of the best names in sports history, Brickyard Kennedy?
Yeah, Brickyard is an interesting one because he's one of these guys that he comes by that nickname honestly. He did work in a brickyard during his off-season back in the days when you had to have an off-season job. And he is actually more famous, I guess, in those days for kind of how loud he was and everything. I mean, we're talking about a guy who pitched, at the turn of the last century. His finest season was in 1899, and, that's before even what we consider the dead ball era. He pitched very well for Brooklyn. I mean, I don't think I would consider him one of the all-time greats by any means, but he certainly had one of the all-time great names.
Talking to Jon Weisman, the author of Brothers in Arms, Koufax, Kershaw, and the Dodgers' extraordinary pitching tradition. So can you lay out for us the career of Sandy Koufax?
Well, sure. I mean, Sandy's obviously a legend. I think he was someone who everyone knew had a great deal of talent. He was actually more famous as a high school basketball player in Brooklyn than as a baseball player, and he even was playing in all-star exhibition of high schoolers against the New York Knicks, and one of the members of the Knicks, we're talking about in the 50s, was sure he'd see Sandy in the NBA. But as it turned out, Sandy pursues baseball, and he really struggled to find himself as a pitcher. He'd have incredible individual game performances, but he didn't have the ability to put them together consistency, and he was very much a student of the game and trying to figure out what it took. And the way I put it in the book was, he, like a sculptor, he sort of chiseled away at everything that didn't work for him over years until finally it came together. One great story about Sandy is that he was pitching in a spring training game in the early 60s, and that was it was a split squad game. So if you don't know, that means half the Dodgers are playing in one city in one game, and half of them are in another.
Yep.
And the Dodgers were low on relievers, and Sandy was out there, and Sandy had this habit of just throwing as hard as he could for as long as he could. And the catcher, Norm Sherry, came out to him and said, "Look, we've really only got one other guy that can follow you out of the bullpen. Why don't you just give yourself a break and take a little bit off of it?" And that was as big a key of anything. That was almost, some people think, the day Koufax finally got it in his head to learn to be a pitcher instead of a thrower. And oversimplifying a little bit, but that was sort of a turning point for his career when he started to really become the consistent, dominant pitcher that he ultimately got him into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy how one simple thing like that could just totally change the shape of your career. But would you be able to describe to us the career of Burley Grimes?
Well, Grimes is best known for being one of the last remaining legal spitballers in baseball. When they outlawed the spitball, it was, if you can imagine, in an era before a players' association, there was still a negotiation that took place where existing major leaguers were like, "Well, you're putting me out of the league if you take the spitball away." And so Grimes and about 9 other pitchers were grandfathered in and were allowed to continue to use the spitball for the rest of their careers. And Grimes would always say, I'm thought of as only a spitball pitcher, but I could throw, I had many other weapons at my disposal. He's in the Hall of Fame. He's probably on the lower echelon of Hall of Fame pitchers, but he throws, over nearly 2,500 innings with an ERA of about 3.46 for Brooklyn. And again, he was a guy that maybe he wasn't dominant year after year after year, but he was a great guy to have in your organization, and a really interesting guy.
Yeah, I don't think Gaylord Perry got the memo about the spitball being banned.
No, and for that matter, I'm not. Don Sutton probably didn't exactly get the memo about throwing a pristine baseball either.
Yeah, waiting for it too.
But and stuff, no doubt, continues today. I think right now there's a real discussion about pine tar and whether that should be legalized in baseball, just because it's probably used a lot more commonly than people realize.
It's actually a pretty interesting discussion, but what can you tell us about Claude Osteen?
Claude Osteen's one of my favorite chapters in the book. He's a guy who pitches in the shadow of Koufax and Drysdale for the better part of his career, and then with Don Sutton. I mean, he was a teammate of 3 Hall of Famers in that Dodger starting rotation, and yet he's sort of the unsung hero bridging the gap for the Dodgers from the mid-'60s to the '70s, and he's one of the top 10 all-time pitchers in Los Angeles. He saved the Dodgers in the 1965 World Series because